Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from Rebound-Dork12345. AITA for confronting my husband as he is planning to go on a dinner date with a long-term ex-girlfriend. My husband, Jack, 36M, used to date Emma, 34F, for years. They broke up because Jack didn't want to get married or have kids. Emma moved away, and about a month later, Jack met me, 30F. I don't look like the typical girls Jack had been dating. For example, Emma is super tall, blonde with blue eyes, and has a PhD. I'm petite, 110 pounds, and short. I'm a nurse, I have dark curly hair, and I'm an introvert. Apparently, she was a social butterfly. Jack has a group of friends that he's known since childhood. They are like brothers to him. But from the very beginning, they didn't like me. They still call me the rebound girl. At our wedding, during his best man speech, he joked, "We all thought rebound girls were temporary, but our brother Jack made an honest woman out of her." Everyone laughed. I didn't. They also joke that I'm just a nurse, and that Jack downgraded, since he has a PhD technically postdoctoral, from a doctor to just a nurse. For my own sanity, I ignore them, and Jack still hangs out with them regularly. Last weekend, there was a fundraising gala, and Emma was there. I saw her for the first time in person. Jack introduced me, and Emma said, "Yeah, I know who she is. The guys weren't kidding when they described her, haha." Jack quickly changed the topic and asked how long she was in town. She said for a week, and then they ended up chatting all night, reminiscing about old times. I decided to talk to other people. Later, at bedtime, Jack mentioned that he should go out to dinner with Emma. I assumed he meant inviting her over, so I asked what kind of food she likes, so I could make it. He said no, it would just be the two of them. I asked, like a date? And he replied, no, just two friends going to dinner. Why are you so insecure? I asked him, do you miss her? Do you miss being with her? He said, I'm not going to lie. It felt great talking to her tonight. There's just something about her. I got really upset and told him he can do whatever he wants. But if he goes on this dinner date, I'm done. He thinks I'm overreacting and being insecure. So, wise people of Reddit, is this rebound girl overreacting? Update. It's 4:45 a.m. and I didn't sleep last night. I thought I'd post an update. I decided to stay awake and talk to him when he came home. When he did, I told him, I could have tracked your location, shown up at the restaurant, and done so many things to get my answer. But I'd like to believe you have enough respect for me to tell me. Were you on a dinner date with your friends or Emma? He showed me pictures and said, no, it was all of us. Me, my friends, and Emma. I was stupid enough to feel relieved, even feeling bad for accusing him. Then he told me to sit down because we needed to talk. He said that after seeing Emma at the gala, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He decided to take Monday and Tuesday, yesterday, off and spent the whole day with her, while I assumed he was at work. He went on about how strong their connection was, how they couldn't stop talking, and how much he enjoyed being with her. He told me I'm a sweet woman, but he never felt that spark with me. He said that at dinner, Emma was laughing and having fun with everyone, and it felt like old times, compared to me being quiet and uncomfortable around his friends. He said it's best if we go our separate ways. I asked him if they had, and he didn't reply. I asked again and again, but he still wouldn't answer. I was so upset and asked, why did you marry me if you're not over her? He said he thought I was the one, but these past 2 days made him realize there's no spark between us. He kept going on about how sweet I am, and that I'll find someone too. I told him to shut up. I said, Emma knew about your cancer treatments. Where was she when you needed a friend? Why didn't she ever call you back then? He went quiet. I feel stupid for ignoring all the red flags over the years and wasting 6 years of my life with him. My next step is hiring a lawyer and finding my own place. I feel so numb right now. I'm going to contact my brother to help me. Thank you, everyone. OP is not an AH. Rather, her husband and his friends are AHs, the big ones. OP entered the marriage in good faith, but her husband and his toxic friends always disrespected her and belittled her as just a nurse. It is really insulting and mean on the part of OP's husband. OP's concerns are genuine. These are not just hypothetical insecurities. I cannot believe OP is still living with her husband despite all this. OP's husband and his friends are AHs, and I would rate them each 3.5 each on the AH scale, whereas OP gets a 0. Let's now jump on to the next story from Importance Hot 2 561. Am I the AH for refusing to eat anything my in-laws cook and getting my girlfriend to do the same? I, 24M, have been dating my girlfriend, 26F, for just over 3 years now. At the beginning of the relationship, I quickly realized that literally everyone in her family is a terrible cook, and I really do mean terrible, like actually dreadful. I never told her this and never tried to influence her to think this. She herself never thought much of it, and in general, liked sharing meals with her family. I always avoided those family meals like the plague. Luckily, at the time, I was a student and could just use that as an excuse, which I did with 100% of them. That did eventually lead to some attrition with her family, but nothing too major, mainly because my girlfriend was finally very happy in a relationship and they didn't want to ruin that for her. At the end of our first year together, I asked her to move in with me, which she did about 2 weeks later. Her family wasn't very happy about it, but still supportive in general because she was happy. However, this is when things started going downhill, fast. When she started living with me, I started cooking for her. Our arrangement was that I take care of all the cooking and kitchen-related chores, and she does the rest, which was a fair deal, considering our apartment. Up to that point, I had never cooked for her properly. At most, I had made her some cookies or a cake. But now, I was cooking for her 3 freshly made meals every day, 7 days a week. I'm a pretty good cook. I did formally train to be one, and eventually want to work in the field. I eased her into it by starting with some of our cultural classics, and she loved it, and slowly but surely started coming to the same conclusion I had, that her family were very bad cooks. Again, I never really voiced that to her, until one day she asked me if that was why I always avoided her family meals, to which I was honest and said yes. The problem really started around this time. She started herself avoiding those family meals when she got invited, which she did every single weekend. She always gave her parents some reason to not go at all, or to arrive late only to play cards and hang out after everyone had already eaten. On the occasions we did go, she would have me make lunch beforehand, we would eat, and get there late to avoid the food. This started to really get on her mother, aunt, and grandmother's nerves, who are the 3 main cooks of the family. This led to several smaller arguments over the last 2 years. Then, about 1 week ago, the whole thing blew up in everyone's face. There was an important event that we had to attend, and there wasn't much way to avoid it. Luckily, or so we thought, it was a potluck, and everyone was bringing something. So my girlfriend asked me to make something that could be eaten as a full meal, just by itself. I made a very hearty, rustic potato lasagna to take for the event, but it really just crashed down on everyone when her mother started to go off on her in front of everyone once she realized my girlfriend was only eating my dish. The whole event devolved into a grilling of my girlfriend for becoming a snob, and me for breaking apart the family. My girlfriend is fully on my side and thinks her family is being unreasonable. Her family is still going off on her a week later to the point she hasn't touched her phone during the entire weekend. Am I the asshole? OP is not an AH for not eating what he doesn't like. He is just being honest about his dislike, and he never forced his girlfriend to share his view. She came to the realization on her own after eating delicious foods prepared by OP. As for his girlfriend's family, they are overreacting. Instead of trying to force someone to eat their tasteless food, they should start cooking delicious dishes. They are totally unreasonable and, of course, AH for their reaction. So I would rate them 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP is not an AH, and I would give him 0 out of 5. Let's now jump on the next story from throwra_sadhusband8. AITA, for bringing up just how much I actually do for our household to my wife. My wife, 41F, and I, 42M, have been married for 15 years. I apparently surprised her by being capable of doing household chores and tasks, which I didn't think much of. My mom always asked me to help out with chores when I was a kid, so I didn't think it was beneath me or anything. I do think I inherited her need to clean excessively, like it's so bad that I can't eat until a mess is dealt with. My mom is an amazing cook. My aunt was a literal chef at a fancy hotel, and my dad loved having barbecues. It was pretty natural to learn from them and pick up a thing or two. The only thing I didn't pick up was how to make a decent cup of tea or coffee. I'm genuinely awful at it. It got to a point where I was handling most of the household chores and taking care of cooking, which I prefer anyway, since she comes home exhausted. I've been asking our children, 11F and 9M, to do some minor tasks around the house, and hopefully teach them this sort of thing too. She has a group of friends who hang out regularly. This time, it was her turn to host the group at her home. I offered to take our children out for the day, and it was all set. Before we left, I had to finish up some things for work. The office space is practically on top of our living room, so I could hear what they were talking about the entire time. One of the friends asked how she always kept our house so spotless, and my wife just bragged about how she was responsible for it all. Then they all started talking about their gripes with their marriages. A common theme was how unhelpful their spouses were. I felt pretty uncomfortable, so I just left the office and went out with the kids. I came back after they had left for the night, and acted as normal until we got to our bedroom. I asked her what was up with that conversation they had, and pointed out that I did the cooking and cleaning in our marriage. She told me not to take it personally, and that she just wanted to fit in with the struggles of her friends. Now I just feel unappreciated, especially since I don't clearly remember any genuine gratitude for what I do from her. Since then, she's been pretty short with me. She says I'm weaponsing what I'm doing against her, and holding it over her head. I don't expect her to compliment me each time I clean or defend me religiously, just a little. My husband is pretty helpful, actually. He does his share would be nice. I can't help but feel like her friends think I'm some sort of deadbeat who comes home to relax and neglect her. Update. I'm pretty shocked this post went as viral as it did, and I tried my best to speak to my wife yesterday. I just can't believe that this is the woman I married. I tried speaking with her, telling her that what she did wasn't that big of a deal, but was still not a nice thing to do. She didn't like me bringing it up again, and just told me to suck it up and stop bitching about one mistake. She apologized, but in a tone that just sounded like she was just tired of dealing with this. I noticed her getting very heated and on the verge of starting an argument, so I backed off and switched to a different topic. I asked if we could adjust our duties at home to be more fair for both of us, since most of our management fell to me. I mean, pretty much 90% of things like cooking, cleaning, including planning for our date nights or vacations for our family rely on me. I do think it's an issue that she gets to come home and just tell me that she's tired. Then she got up in my face, telling me I had no right to lecture her about chore duties when I'm practically at home most of the time. She completely refused to hear me out and basically told me that what we have works best for our situation. She threw me in my face that she was the moneymaker, and that balanced everything out in the end. Even this morning, she was pretty annoyed with me, coming downstairs in a bad mood. I'm very sure our kids noticed it too, but I drove them to school after they got ready. When I got back, I noticed that my wife left her packed lunch on our kitchen counter. So now I'm sitting here, just feeling like the woman I've known for 15 years hates me. I guess I'll have to push this issue properly, even if she gets angry. She's been ignoring my texts and attempts to call her. I can't just let her act like this, especially in front of our children. OP is not an AH here, and his concerns are 100% genuine. OP's wife is being selfish and unsupportive. No doubt, OP is the primary breadwinner, but managing the household is not an easy task. It is also a full-time job. Not appreciating is one thing, but not acknowledging OP's efforts is dismissive and humiliating. No matter what the reason, it is not justifiable. On top of this, OP's wife is not even ready to have any meaningful conversation about this. So, she is a big AH, and I would rate her 3 out of 5 on the AH scale. And OP is an innocent soul, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Anno_pre24. AITA for telling off a lady in a supermarket after she made the teenage cashier cry. I, 35F, was doing my usual weekly grocery shopping at a local supermarket. It was a busy afternoon, and the line at the checkout was pretty long. I was waiting patiently when I noticed the woman in front of me, probably mid-50s, becoming increasingly agitated as the teenage cashier, who couldn't have been older than 17, was scanning her items. The cashier seemed a bit flustered. I could tell she was probably new, making a few mistakes here and there, but nothing serious. The older woman, however, was not having it. She started muttering under her breath, rolling her eyes, and tapping her foot. Finally, when the cashier accidentally scanned an item twice and needed to call for a supervisor to void it, the woman lost it. She started berating the poor girl, saying things like, "How hard can it be to do this job? You can't even do basic tasks. You're wasting people's time." She just kept going on, and the more she yelled, the more flustered the cashier got until she started tearing up. I stood there for a second, hoping the lady would cool down, but she didn't. The poor cashier was clearly trying her best to keep it together. That's when I stepped in. I said to her, "You don't have the right to treat someone like that. She's doing her best, and it's just a mistake. If you're so unhappy, maybe you should try working like her for a day and see how easy it is." The woman looked stunned and told me to mind my own business. I replied, "It is my business when you're making a kid cry over something as stupid as groceries." The cashier's supervisor had arrived by then and stepped in to handle the situation, and the woman stormed off still muttering and cursing. After she left, the cashier thanked me with teary eyes, but a couple of people behind me in line gave me looks like I was the one who had done something wrong. Now I'm second-guessing myself. So Reddit, AITA for telling her off? Mini update? Oh my gosh, wow. I'm honestly overwhelmed by all the support and kind comments. Thank you all so much for reassuring me that I did the right thing. Reading through all the love for the cashier made me realize just how many people care about situations like this, and it has really restored my faith in humanity. So, I've decided that tomorrow I'm going to go back to the store and see if she will be working. I want to let her know that she's got a whole community of love cheering her on, and even show her a few of the comments to lift her spirits. I'll update you all if I get the chance to chat with her. Once again, thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Final update. Alright, I want to address something quickly before I start. A few people have commented saying they think this post is fake. And while I get that some things on here can sound too good to be true, I promise everything I've shared really happened. I do, however, understand the skepticism. Anyways, before I share the update, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who sent reassuring and kind words to both me and the cashier. It really made a difference for both of us, so thank you. With that being said, on to the update. I went back to the store yesterday, and luckily, I caught the cashier on her break. I was a little nervous at first, approaching her outside the store, but she recognized me right away, smiled, and gestured for me to come over. I told her about all the love and support my post had received, and even showed her a few of the comments. She was genuinely touched and even got a little teary-eyed, but in a good way this time. We ended up chatting for a bit, and she told me that she's a college student working part-time. This is actually her first job. She said she's been feeling more confident since that day, and hearing that so many people had her back really made her feel supported. While we were chatting, her supervisor happened to walk by and recognized me. She stopped with a warm smile and thanked me for stepping in the other day. She said it's not often that customers speak up like that, and the team really appreciated it. She mentioned how younger employees can sometimes struggle in those tough moments, and having someone stand up for them meant a lot. It felt so good to hear that what I did didn't just help the cashier, but lifted the spirits of the whole team. It made me realize even more how important kindness can be in moments like these. I thanked her for her kind words, and after a while of the three of us chatting, she eventually left us as she had to go back to work. After our conversation, the cashier asked if she could befriend me on social media, and of course, I said yes. Now, the two of us are connected, and it feels like we both got something positive out of the whole experience. And there you have it. This is most likely going to be my final update on this whole situation, and I'm so glad that everyone ended up happy in the end. Well, everyone except that rude lady, but let's focus on the positive. Before I go, even though I sound like I'm just repeating myself, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who took the time to comment, share kind words, and give encouragement. Your support honestly gave me the push to go back and talk to her, and it really did brighten her day. I couldn't have imagined the impact this post would have had, but I'm so grateful for it. With that, I say my goodbye, and once again, thank you. OP is not an AH here for supporting the young cashier and standing up to the toxic customer. It is a form of social service. More power to OP and whistleblowers like her. On the other hand, that lady customer is an AH for berating an innocent cashier. In a business, customers are inevitable, but it doesn't mean they have the right to attack a worker like this. So the lady customer is an AH, and I would rate her 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on the next story from Sweaty-Dark 2229. AITA for leaving my boyfriend for no reason. I, 26F, have been with my now ex-boyfriend Eric, 28M, for 2 years. Overall, we've had a good relationship, nothing crazy, until last night when things completely fell apart. We were out at a bar with some of his friends, just having a normal night. Drinks, food, the usual. Eric and his friend Mark, 28M, were joking around, and Eric made a comment about how much Mark was eating. Something like, "Careful, Mark, you'll eat the whole damn bar." It seemed harmless at first, just typical guy humor. But then Mark looked right at me and said, "If only she knew." It was one of those moments where you instantly feel uncomfortable, like there's something going on behind your back. I had no idea what Mark was talking about, and the whole vibe at the table shifted. But before I could even react, Eric exploded. He went off on Mark, screaming at him to shut the f up, and even tried to get physical. His other friends had to hold him back. Mark didn't really react, which only made Eric angrier. The whole thing was awkward as hell, and we ended up leaving early. When we got back to my place, I couldn't stop thinking about that comment. So I asked Eric, what the hell did Mark mean by "if only she knew"? What don't I know? And instead of just answering me like a normal person, Eric lost it again. He started yelling at me, telling me to drop it and stop being paranoid. He was dodging every question, getting more pissed every time I brought it up. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I just wanted to know what was going on. It felt like there was something important being hidden from me, and I wasn't about to let it slide. But every time I asked, he'd just get more defensive and angry. Finally, he stormed out of my apartment. He doesn't live with me, so I locked the door and called it a night. I didn't hear from him until this morning, and when I did, it was just more angry texts, telling me to drop it and leave him alone. At that point, I was done. I'm not going to sit around and be treated like I'm crazy for asking a simple question. I texted him back saying we're done, I need space, and if he can't be honest with me, then I don't want any part of this relationship. End of story. Now here's where it gets worse. He's been going around to our mutual friends, telling them that I left him for no reason, and trying to make it seem like I'm the one who overreacted. Some of them have even reached out to me, saying I should have just let it go and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. I told them to mind their own business. I don't care what they think. None of them were in that moment. None of them saw how he acted. And none of them have to live with the pit in their stomach that I've had since that weird comment from Mark. I'm not about to stay in a relationship where I feel like something shady is going on behind my back. If Eric can't be straight with me after 2 years together, then what's the point? So, AITA? Update. I feel like I'm living in some kind of twisted nightmare. And the more I try to make sense of it, the worse it gets. Mark called me today while I was at work. I didn't expect him to call me because he was ignoring me. I stepped outside to take the call, and he told me something that I never in a million years could have prepared for. He told me that Eric has been putting other men's semen into my food, drinks, skincare shampoo conditioner, and even my toothpaste. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic. And that's what Mark said. Eric has apparently been hooking up with random men, having them finish into cups, and then using it in my meals and drinks like it's some kind of sick joke. Even as I write this, I'm still in complete disbelief. Who does that to someone? Mark said he found out about this a week ago, but for some reason, it took him that long to tell me. A week? I've been living my life, completely oblivious, trusting Eric, someone I loved, while this was happening behind my back. I feel so betrayed, so disgusted, and so violated. When I asked Mark if he and Eric were having an affair, or if this was some sort of twisted thing between them, he swore they weren't. And he even made a gross comment about not wanting to touch Eric because who knows what diseases he has. That made my stomach turn. I'm getting tested for everything now because I don't know what's been in my body. When I got home, I went straight to the kitchen. Mark told me to check under the sink, and there they were, the cups, hidden behind the cleaning supplies. I lost my shit. I threw out everything in the kitchen and bathroom, even stuff I knew wasn't touched. I don't care. Everything feels contaminated now. My home doesn't feel like a safe space anymore. Every time I walk into the kitchen, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I can't even function without my mind going to dark places, thinking about all the times I had no idea what was happening. I don't have any solid proof of this. It's just Mark's word and those disgusting cups, and I feel so powerless. If nothing can be done about this, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. How is this even legal? How can someone get away with something so vile? I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. This whole thing has been messing with my head in ways I can't even explain. I feel dirty. I feel like I've been violated on such a deep level, and there's nothing I can do to undo it. My mom wants me to check into a hospital just to make sure I'm okay mentally, and I'm honestly going to do it. I don't feel stable right now. I don't feel like myself. I'm scared I might hurt myself or someone else. Eric was eating the same food. He was eating the food that he had contaminated right alongside me. Was it a kink? A power trip? I don't even know anymore. All I know is that the man I thought I knew, the man I loved, is a complete stranger to me now. I can't believe I've been living with someone capable of something so vile. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. How can he do this to me? I'm genuinely losing it. I'm a danger to myself. I'm going to check myself into the hospital. OP is absolutely not the AH. OP's decision to leave her boyfriend was right, given his evasive behavior, and the horrifying revelation about what he was allegedly doing is beyond disturbing. No one should tolerate deceit or such extreme violations of trust. OP's prioritizing her well-being and seeking medical and mental health support is a brave step in the right direction. As for scores, I would rate OP's boyfriend 3.5 on the AH scale and OP 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from whole_challenge_9099. AITA for telling my sister I hope her husband cheats on her after she ruined my wedding dress. I, 29F, have been engaged for about a year, and I'm getting married in 3 months. Like many brides, my wedding dress is a big deal to me. I spent months picking it out, and it cost more than I care to admit. It's a gorgeous custom-made gown that I was keeping at my mom's house because I wanted to avoid any accidents at home. I have a dog that sheds like crazy. My sister, 34F, recently had some sort of life-changing epiphany and decided she's done with fast fashion and wants to live a more eco-conscious lifestyle. Cool, right? Except she's taken it to a weird level, constantly shaming me and others about our choices, like buying new clothes instead of thrifted. She's also become super into DIY projects, most of which end up looking like a Pinterest fail. But whatever, I wasn't going to say anything. Fast forward to last weekend, I stopped by my mom's house to check on the dress and make sure everything was fine. When I opened the garment bag, my heart legit stopped. My sister, in all her DIY glory, had dyed my wedding dress. Apparently, she thought the white was too traditional and boring and decided to upcycle it by dip dyeing the bottom half in this hideous tie-dye rainbow pattern. Her words, "I made it more fun and unique. You'll stand out." I lost it and screamed at her, and she just stood there, acting like I was being overdramatic. She kept saying she was just trying to help and that it's just a dress. I told her she's a selfish psycho and to never speak to me again. Then, and this is where I might be the asshole, I said, "I hope your husband gets so sick of your controlling, self-righteous BS that he cheats on you." She started crying and called me a bunch of names, saying I crossed the line. Now my mom is mad at me, saying my sister was only trying to do something nice, and that I didn't need to take it that far. She's insisting I apologize for the cheating comment, but I feel like I was justified in saying it. My fiancé thinks my sister is nuts, but even he raised an eyebrow at that last comment and said I might have gone too far. AITA for saying what I said, or is my sister just the worst? Overall, OP is not an AH for being upset about her sister's action, ruining her wedding dress. However, OP's comment about hoping her sister's husband cheats on her was an overreaction and unnecessary. For this comment, I would rate OP 0.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's sister, she is an AH, and I would rate her 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on the last story for this videos. It is from Not As Niche Throw RA. AITA for reporting my professor for refusing to accommodate my disability? I, 21F, am a Canadian university student, majoring in psychology with an 87% average. I have a documented disability that frequently requires hospitalization, which is why I need certain accommodations, like being allowed to submit assignments online and recording lectures if I'm too ill to attend. With these in place, I've been able to keep up my grades. This semester, I'm taking an elective course, as you have to take several to graduate, taught by Dr. X, 70 SM. At the beginning of the semester, I submitted all the paperwork for my accommodations, as I do for every class. These accommodations aren't anything excessive, just being allowed to submit work online without penalty and being sent to recording lectures in case I'm hospitalized or unable to attend in person. Other professors this semester have gone above and beyond, and I couldn't be happier with them. Dr. X, however, was immediately dismissive and told me he didn't believe in special treatment and that I should learn to prioritize attending class like everyone else. I tried explaining that my condition makes it impossible for me to always attend in person and that these accommodations are necessary for me to succeed. He said I was using my disability as a crutch and that life doesn't hand out exceptions. I emailed him afterward to clarify and ask again that he respect the accommodations. He responded that I should be grateful he hadn't already penalized me for missing one of his lectures, and that, in the real world, there are no special privileges. This honestly broke me because I've worked so hard to keep my grades up despite my condition. Things escalated during a major assignment. I had submitted it online, as per my accommodation, because I was hospitalized at the time. Dr. X deducted 20% from my grade, moving an 80 I'd earned to a 60, saying it was late because I didn't submit it in person. I tried to talk to him about it, but he refused to budge and said I should have found a way to submit it in person. I reminded him that my accommodations allow for online submissions, and he just brushed it off, saying I should have figured out another way. At that point, I reported him to the university's disability office. They were really supportive and told me he was absolutely in the wrong. A few days later, yesterday, Dr. X pulled me aside after lecture, which I attended in person, and said I had made him look bad by going to the administration. He called me entitled and said I should suck it up and deal with life's unfairness. Now, some classmates have heard about it, and a few said I overreacted by reporting him and should have just accepted the situation since it's only one class and one professor. They keep saying I just need a 50 to pass the class. But I don't think I should have to accept discrimination just because this class is an elective, and because I'm still passing. My accommodations are legally required, and I've worked really hard to maintain my grades in spite of my health issues. AITA? OP is not the asshole for reporting her professor. She has a documented disability that requires specific accommodations, and the professor's refusal to honor these legally mandated adjustments is discriminatory. The professor is an AH for doing this, and I would rate him 3 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now jump onto the next story from Empty Chemist 929. AITA for telling my sister, I don't know if I love her after finding out about her 5-year affair. My sister, 32, moved in with me because she got pregnant 5 months ago from what she claimed was a one-night stand. I love my sister, so of course I took her in. My husband is overseas for 6 more months, so it was nice to have her around because I care about her very much. On Monday, I came home and saw my sister and a strange woman in a screaming match on my doorstep. I obviously didn't know what was happening, but I saw the woman poking my pregnant sister's shoulder, so I intervened. I sent my sister inside, and she begged me to send the woman away. I didn't understand what was going on, but I wanted the altercation to end for everyone's sake, so I told the woman as much. Then she started screaming, asking me if I was also sleeping with her husband. I was like, WTF? And then she basically revealed that my sister had been having an affair with her husband for 5 years. 5 years. She had everything printed out. Chats, photos, emails, receipts. It was disturbing to see, and I didn't want to go through it all. But a few things were established. My sister knew about his wife. She knew she was the mistress and liked it. This woman was a stay-at-home mom to their 4 kids, one of whom has a severe disability from a car accident. Her husband knew about my sister's pregnancy and even took her on a baby moon to celebrate it. The affair had been going on the entire time, with my sister believing he would eventually leave his wife for her. My sister had fully embraced the role of being the other woman and was emotionally invested in their relationship, despite his repeated lies about leaving his wife. I told the woman I was very sorry and that I obviously didn't know, but I asked her to leave because this wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't want the neighbors to call the police. She was furious but gave me her number on a post-it, begging me not to let her husband stay at my house. I assured her that no man was stepping foot in my home. My sister was begging me not to believe the woman, calling her a vindictive ex-wife. I told her, "All right then, let's look up the marriage online. Let's see if a motion for dissolution of marriage was ever submitted." We fought hard. My sister kept saying I would never understand, and that they loved each other, but he just couldn't leave his wife, blah blah blah. I called her dumb and naive. The next day, I told her she could stay here because I didn't want her to become a financial burden on that woman in any way. But I also told her that, right now, I didn't want to engage with her. My sister asked me if I still loved her, and I told her honestly, right now, I can't say I do. I will always help my nephew and not endanger you. But I can't like you because you've shown me you're not a trustworthy person. I told her I didn't trust her not to try anything with my husband, and I didn't trust her with anything at all. So I made her sign a tenant's agreement. She's been begging me to forgive her, and I told her there's nothing to forgive. I just don't know who she is anymore. Update. First, I'd like to clarify a few things. I am not going to tell my sister to get rid of the baby. That's not my place, and I would never suggest such a thing. Also, I am not going to install tracking software on her phone or demand access to all her devices. That's invasive and wrong. I've been thinking a lot, and while I can't say that I don't love my sister, it's very hard to feel that love right now. I don't know who she is anymore. It's not just that she lied to me. It's what she did, and how convinced she is that she was justified because they were in love. She's brought chaos into my home that I opened up to her. I'm deeply disappointed in her, and I just don't like her at the moment. I'm letting her stay with me because I don't want her to become dependent on him. I don't think he's a good man either, and as a social worker, I've seen these scenarios too many times. My sister is already deluded. I don't need to open the door to a dependency that's also financial. Now, onto the update. I haven't been punishing my sister, but I've been treating her like a roommate. This is driving her crazy. She's begging me to go back to how things were before, but I can't. I told her that I need time, and that things can't just return to normal overnight. She tried to explain how it all happened. She admitted that she always knew he was married, but believed she could tell how unhappy he was, and felt he deserved to be happy. They met at a bar a few weeks after his son's accident. He told her that his wife hadn't touched him since it happened, and that he was about to explode. I asked her why she would involve herself with a married man, knowing the hurt it would cause. She said she wanted to be a wife and a good mom, and that included his kids. She had hoped he would divorce his wife so they could all move on and finally be happy together. I just stared at her, unable to comprehend how she could rationalize her actions. A few days later, he appeared at our house, claiming he had left his wife and wanted to be with my sister. I told him to leave immediately or I would call the police. My sister was furious with me, accusing me of ruining her chance at happiness. I made it clear to her, if he comes over again, I will evict her. She's free to date anyone she wants, but not under my roof. I also told her that if she plans to have him around after the baby is born, she'll need to find her own place. Word has gotten around our community about the affair. While we were grocery shopping, a woman even spat on my sister. Many of her friends have cut ties with her, calling her a homewrecker. Some are married themselves and don't want her near their husbands. I haven't said "I told you so" even once. We unexpectedly ran into his wife at a local cafe. My sister wanted to apologize and suggested that maybe they could all have a good relationship for the sake of the kids. The wife laughed coldly and said, "You made your choices. Now live with them. Don't expect me to make this easier for you." My sister is devastated and has been lying in bed ever since. I'm taking care of her physical needs, making sure she eats, stays hydrated, and attends her prenatal appointments. But I can't bring myself to comfort her emotionally. I just don't have it in me right now. Second and final update. My sister just won't stop talking about him. Every day, it's the same story. Their perfect future together. The apartment they're moving into. How everything will be great once his divorce is done. She's completely lost in this delusion, acting like none of the lies and betrayal matter. I can't stand it. She made him write me letters. Yes, actual letters. As if that's going to magically make me approve of him. She leaves them around the house, thinking that if I just read them, I'll suddenly understand how sorry he is and how much he loves her. I haven't responded to a single one. It's ridiculous. I told her over and over that I don't want anything to do with him, but she keeps pushing, as if she can wear me down. It's beyond frustrating. Then came the talk of moving in together. She sat me down and asked for my blessing, telling me how important it was to her that I support their relationship. She actually wanted me to meet him, to give him a chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's when I drew the line. I told her flat out, if she moves in with him, I'm done. I told her I would go low contact, that I wouldn't be part of their life, and that she's on her own if she goes through with this. If she wanted my support, she had to leave him, full stop. For a moment, I thought she was finally getting it. She showed me screenshots from his ex-wife. The ex had pretended she wanted him back, and this guy fell for it immediately. He told her how much he missed her, how my sister was a mistake, how he wanted to fix things with his family. My sister was crushed. She came to me with the screenshots, crying, and I thought, for a couple of days, that maybe, just maybe, she would finally see him for who he really is. I was hopeful. But then, as usual, he wormed his way back in. He told her he only said those things because he was afraid his ex would take the kids away. And of course, she bought it. Now she's actively moving in with him, packing up her things and making all these plans like nothing happened. The screenshots? Forgotten? The lies? Excused. She's determined to be with him no matter what, and I am done. I told her I'm not helping her anymore. No more driving her to appointments, no more checking on her, nothing. I'm not going to pretend everything's okay while she's diving headfirst into this disaster. Now, I barely talk to her. If she asks where the tea is, I'll tell her. If she wants to know if there's milk left, I'll answer. But that's it. I'm emotionally cut off, and I told her straight. I'll be here if things fall apart, if she's in danger, but I am not going to be a part of this train wreck. She's on her own now. The community backlash hasn't slowed down either. Everywhere we go, people are whispering, staring, and judging. They're not just looking at her, they're looking at me too. People know she's living with me, and I've started hearing comments at work about why I haven't completely cut her off. It's affecting my life now, and I just can't carry her mistakes anymore. Her friends? All gone. The ones who were married have cut ties completely. She's isolated herself, but instead of waking up, she's clinging harder to him, holding on to this fantasy that everything will work out. But I'm done caring. She's made her choice, and now she has to live with the fallout. This is the final update because I'm finished. I'm done trying, done caring, done dealing with the mess she's made. She can have her life with him, but I'm not going to be part of it. OP is not an AH for setting boundaries. Despite all that OP's sister did, OP took her in and provided essential support, and she cannot be an AH for refusing to enable the toxic relationship. OP's frustration and emotional detachment from her sister is understandable and reasonable, because her sister has been continuously making poor choices. OP's actions fall under the umbrella of tough love. As for OP's sister, she is a big a-hole for making such a mean choice, and expecting so much from a man who impregnated her without leaving his first wife. So, I would give her a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. And that man is the biggest AH for playing two women. And I would give him 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from quirky_bad_499. During our date night, I saw my wife dancing with another man and I got mad. AITA? My wife and I went salsa dancing for date night the other night, something we rarely get to do since having our first baby 18 months ago. With no family nearby to help with childcare and babysitters being expensive, it was only our second time going out alone since our child was born. We were having a great time, but at one point I went to the washroom. I was gone for no more than 5 minutes, and when I came back, I saw her on the dance floor, dancing with another man. I felt it was really disrespectful and got upset. I stood there watching, and when she saw me, I threw my hands up like, "What the hell?" She just smiled and kept dancing with him. So, I walked over, tapped the guy on the shoulder, and he immediately stopped and apologized. After he left, my wife got really mad, called me controlling, and spent the rest of the evening sitting at the bar, sulking. I told her I thought it was disrespectful to dance with someone else while on a date with me, but she wasn't having it. AITA? Edit. Many are saying this is normal for salsa dancing, especially in social halls. In this case, this was not a social dance hall. People dancing with their partners were not frequently switching partners. It was more of a club setting. So, she would have been spotted by herself and approached by a man to dance with her. She did not have to accept the dance, in my opinion. She thinks it was harmless. Edit 2. I talked to my wife. She has doubled down and said I completely overreacted and needlessly ruined our night. She admitted that the guy dancing with her told her she was beautiful and flirted with her and that she was flattered. When I asked if she told him she was married, she said she didn't because she didn't have time to. I had returned from the washroom by then. I am very upset by this and I don't know where to go from here. Sorry guys for the information drip. It is hard to type everything out while looking after my toddler. Some more clarification, particularly around communicating boundaries. I have always communicated my expectations and boundaries with her. We never had a conversation that included this particular scenario. Would you dance with someone else and allow them to flirt with you if I stepped away for 5 to 10 minutes while we were on a date together? But we have discussed boundaries and how we expect to conduct ourselves when out without the other. She has had girls' nights out prior to our child's birth, and she always told me if someone had approached her and how she'd handled it. It was never an issue. We were always on the same page. This is the first time she downplays crossing boundaries, which were previously agreed upon, and providing me with half-truths, unless I ask. When I address those concerns, she says I am overreacting. Edit 3. My wife chatted again about this tonight. As many of you have suggested, I asked my wife how she would feel if she came back from the bathroom and found me dancing with another woman, someone I likely asked to dance, since it's less common for women to approach men. She admitted she would feel jealous and wouldn't want me to do that. When I pointed out the hypocrisy, she argued that it's different because, in her view, accepting a dance is not the same as a man actively seeking out a woman to dance with. I disagreed, saying that if it's acceptable for her, it should be the same for me. She responded that if I ever did that, it would lead to a major fight, and she'd accuse me of cheating. Her reasoning is that, as a man, I would have pursued the woman, whereas as a woman, she is simply accepting an offer and can control the meaning behind it. I think it's BS. OP is not an AH, rather his wife is being cheap by dancing with another man on their rare date night. Her double standard is exposed when she admitted that she would feel jealous if the roles were reversed. So, I would rate OP 0 and OP's wife 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from humble_donut_39. AITA for cutting ties with my mom and grandma after they lied about a COVID test and caused a COVID super spreader at our wedding. TLDR. My mom and grandma lied about a COVID test, and as a result, 1 by 3 of our guests are sick, our honeymoon was ruined, and my relationships with both women may be unsalvageable. Apologies in advance for a long post. I am really struggling emotionally to process and move past the events of the last 1.5 weeks surrounding our wedding. Not sure what I'm looking for, other than a platform to just get this all out there, because it's weighing heavily on me and my heart is broken. We just got back from our honeymoon in Mexico, which we spent a year saving for, and which was ruined after we tested positive for COVID while on the trip, as a result of decisions made by my mom and grandma, which I will detail below. About a year ago, my maternal grandma asked her cousin to officiate our wedding, without asking me first. This was someone with whom I had no relationship and had only met once prior. I had no desire for him to officiate our wedding, but went along with it, because in our family, grandma gets what grandma wants, or there's hell to pay. In fact, if you cross her, she will cry in her room, post something nasty about you on Facebook, and then write you off until you apologize, even if you've done nothing wrong. Spoilers. Fast forward to 1 week before our wedding. We learned that the cousin and our officiant and his wife had been exposed to COVID, and they were on their way to my grandma's house to stay for the week leading up to the wedding. My out-of-state parents and brother were staying there as well, and my dad and brother made the decision to get out of there to avoid getting sick and came to stay with my fiancé and me. We all voiced our concerns and made it clear to my mom and grandma that it was a bad idea to host people who had had a COVID exposure a few days before our wedding and were met with the most pathetic display of immaturity and selfishness by my grandmother and mom. My grandma started crying and saying they would all boycott our wedding if we were that worried about COVID, which in 2024 is just a cold. Absolutely zero attempt was made to acknowledge our concerns about public health at our own event. For some additional backstory, my maternal grandmother has always acted this way, and all 4 of her children blindly give in to her antics, but especially my mom. And all of them have displayed an extremely frustrating denial of science, which has been gotten worse with the political conflict swirling in our family with the upcoming election. Anyway, my fiancé and I insisted that both our officiant and his wife take a COVID rapid test before we would allow them to come to the wedding. I contacted the venue and had a backup officiant lined up. I personally gave my mom 2 rapid tests and asked her make sure both the officiant and his wife tested negative on Friday morning, the day of the rehearsal dinner. My mom texted me, "The lepers are clean." I called her and asked point blank, "Mom, do you swear that both our officiant and his wife tested negative?" And she swore to me that they had. So I called the venue and cancelled the backup officiant, and we went ahead with the wedding weekend. Everything went perfectly. Our wedding was everything I dreamed. The only tainted memories I will carry with me forever are the ones of my grandma acting cold and standoffish to me at our rehearsal dinner and the entire wedding day because I had the audacity to insult her. I'll never forget the way she treated me. Fast forward to the Monday after the wedding. We were headed to the airport to fly to Mexico for our honeymoon and caught wind from my mom that my grandma had come down with a cold. I told her to make sure she tests for COVID, as that would be the obvious assumption for anyone with 2 brain cells. We landed in Mexico and were just happy to be there to enjoy. Then all hell broke loose. We found out while in Mexico that my grandma had hosted my other grandparents, Dad's side, for dinner the night we left, while actively symptomatic, and they were both now COVID positive. Then the truth slowly started coming to light, and we learned that my mom had lied to me about our officiant and his wife both testing negative. Only our officiant had tested. His wife had the sniffles, and they knew if she tested positive I'd throw a wrench in their plans, so they just didn't test her. I got more upset than I've ever been in my life, and texted my mom that we were feeling completely betrayed, and that at the very least my grandma owes an apology to my dad's parents for getting them sick. In return, I got a screenshot from my brother showing that my grandma had texted him, "Tell your sister when I die, she can put selfish bitch who ruined my honeymoon on my headstone." All in all, 26 people are sick, more than 1/3 of our guests. Some are very severely ill. My dad has it the worst. He called me last night to ask how to know it's time to go to the hospital for labored breathing. My mom is denying that she lied. My grandma is texting the entire family trying to get them on her side, and I'm being told I'm overreacting because I'm brainwashed by the leftist media. I had a meltdown on our honeymoon and just sobbed into my new husband's lap for an hour. I don't know how to move past this, or whether I ever want to speak to my mom or grandma again. I feel like COVID aside, they chose to prioritize their own experience at the expense of nearly 30 other people, including us, the wedding couple. I will never forget this betrayal, and I just don't know what to do. I'm mourning the aftermath of my own wedding. OP is certainly not an AH. Instead, her mom and grandma are extremely selfish, and AH for disregarding others' health. Their negligence endangered the lives of many and ruined OP's honeymoon. And now they expect OP to behave normally, which seems impossible. Her frustration is inevitable, and breaking ties with her mom and grandma is 100% justified. They are really AH and deserve at least a 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from accurate_gain_7272. AITA for kicking my husband out of the house after he disrespected our daughter. I, 28F, have been married to my husband, Steve, 38M, for 5 years. He has 2 children, Jake, 10M, and Mia, 16F. Steve and Mia have always had a complicated relationship, but things have taken a turn for the worse recently. She and I have a great relationship. Both Jake and Mia call me mom even though I'm their stepmom, and I love them both. Their mother gave up her parental rights. I formally adopted Mia on her 14th birthday and Jake on his 10th birthday. A few months ago, Mia came out as a lesbian. I was incredibly proud of her for having the courage to be open about her identity, but Steve's reaction was anything but supportive. He became distant and cold toward Mia, making snide comments and creating a generally hostile environment. I tried talking to him about it, but he insisted that Mia was just going through a phase and that she needed tough love. Tonight, things came to a head. Mia invited her girlfriend over for dinner, and Steve lost it. He started yelling at Mia, calling her names and saying that she was an embarrassment to the family. He told her that she was no longer welcome in our home if she continued this lifestyle. I was furious. I told Steve that he was being unreasonable and that he needed to leave. He refused, so I packed a bag for him and told him to stay with his brother until he could sort out his feelings. I said, "I am the sole owner of this household, and you have no say over whether or not my daughter can stay in the house I own." He stormed out, calling me a traitor and accusing me of choosing Mia over our marriage. I own my house outright because my parents had willed it to me, and they passed away in a car accident 6 years ago. Steve has been sending me angry messages, accusing me of breaking up our family. His family has also been calling, saying that I overreacted and that Mia needs to respect her father's rules. I feel torn because I believe I did the right thing by protecting Mia, but I also worry about the impact this is having on Jake and our family as a whole. I also feel bad for throwing it in his face that I'm the sole owner of the house. Update. Well, as you could imagine, everything got so much worse. To recap, I, 32F, kicked my husband, 33M, out a couple of weeks ago. He was always berating and belittling me. He is unemployed due to a car accident that he had several years ago, and he refused to do anything. When he cleaned, he would pick up the living room where the two little kids, 3F and 8-month-old F, would play, and he would rarely do that. Instead, he expected me to work my 10-hour shifts, come home, clean the house, wake up in the morning, get all 3 kids ready for school, then go to work. On my days off, I would spend them taking kids to doctors, forcing him to go to his doctor appointments, do the grocery shopping, the laundry, and everything. And when I didn't help him clean, I would get treated like trash and that because I wasn't doing anything. Well, he finally left a week ago, and it has just been awful. He didn't go to his sister's like I told him to do. Instead, he has apparently been staying in the wooded area behind my house. I live on 2 acres. He has come up to my house several times and left notes on my door trying to make me feel bad for him. Well, the notes weren't getting him anywhere, and now he has progressed to banging on my doors and the sides of my house. My best friend offered to come stay the weekend with me to help actually get my house cleaned, and while I was at work on Saturday, they would clean up some more for me. Well, while I was at work, he started with the banging and he was pissed, threw his wallet at my friend and said, "I won't be needing this where I'm going," and then continued to bang on my house until I came home early and called the police. They came out, talked to him to see if he would be willing to go with medics to a mental hospital. Shocker, he didn't go, and the police couldn't make him go. Instead, he just kept drinking beers one after the other. No clue exactly where he got the beers, as he has no access to my money in any way, and I didn't buy them for him. And last night, while I had just got the 2 younger ones to sleep, thankfully my 11-year-old daughter was at her bio dad's, he started banging again, woke up the 8-month-old, scared the out of me and my friend who was in the living room. I called the police again. They came out, looked for him, and couldn't find him anywhere. The police suggested that I go somewhere else for the night at least. Thankfully, my parents don't live very far from me at all, and so we went and stayed with my parents. But as of right now, that's what is happening, and I have no clue what to do at the moment. OP is certainly not an AH for protecting her daughter from her husband's toxic behavior. It is not an overreaction. Instead, it is standing up for the well-being of her children. She did the right thing by prioritizing her children's well-being and creating a safe environment for them. OP is not an AH and deserves 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP's husband is a big AH, and I would rate him 2.5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from gold_wind_5888 AITA for crying. When my boyfriend let his best friend's wife alter the dish I made for dinner? My boyfriend, 28M, and I, 22F, met at work 2 years ago. Technically, I was working part-time during undergrad, and he was a customer, but after a couple of months, we started going out. I really love this man, and nothing has happened on this scale before, so I'm very confused about it. My BF has a very tight group of friends. I am well acquainted with them, and their girlfriends. One of them, Dave, just is married to Ellie, fake names. Ellie is an excellent cook and often hosts dinners, and everyone brings a dessert to those dinners. I am the youngest in the group, so most times they brush off my requests for contributing or bringing in a dessert. However, the last time I asked Dave and Ellie if they wanted anything extra like wine or some sweet dish for dinner, they said I could bring one of those sweet dishes I make for my boyfriend. I'm Indian, and even though I can't cook as well as my mom, and I'm well, in a different country for studies, I called my mom up and had her teach me properly how to make a specific Bengali sweet, which is my favorite. I had my friends taste it, and they said it was great. My boyfriend ate some and said it was excellent. Except, last night, I greeted Ellie and kept the dish in the kitchen. When the food was brought out and my boyfriend told everyone I made it, I saw that someone had added cinnamon powder to the sweet. You never have the sweet with cinnamon powder. The dessert tasted like cinnamon, and I felt horrible. Though everyone said thank you, and it was good, I think my face gave it away. And my boyfriend took me aside and said that Ellie had told him that my sweet looked too white and thought some cinnamon might bring some color into it. I don't know. I just felt awful, and I started to tear up. My boyfriend then defended Ellie and said that his friends already think I'm a child and not make a big deal of this, and we will talk about it. I told him Ellie asked him first. Couldn't he have told her not to add cinnamon to the sweet? He told me he didn't think it was a big deal and asked me to drop the topic on the way home. I didn't text him goodnight, and this morning he said he was sorry and said my crying made him feel like an awful person. I don't know, now I think I overreacted. AITA? Update. Ellie saw this post. My boyfriend texted me to see if it was me. I said yes. He said we needed to talk. For safety purposes, my best friend will be here. I don't know. I never expected my post to blow up. Update. He said he needed space from the relationship. I think with the way this post blew up and what happened because of a post, I should clear up some things. I never asked if I should leave my boyfriend for this. I asked if this was an overreaction, my crying. But having thousands of people tell me this was racially charged, Ellie wanted power, my BF is etc. My brain went haywire. Boyfriend called yesterday, and when I got there, his house with my best friend, Dave and Ellie were there. Ellie was crying and Dave looked really pissed at me. My BF told me to sit down and Dave started with, how could I make a post that most of the people in the dinner party would recognize and know, and could shame Ellie and my BF? My BF was silent and wouldn't even look at me, and was only shaking his head. It felt like I was a kid, being scolded by my parents with my elder sibling disappointed in my actions. That is what I felt, and it looked. I admit, it was very spineless of me, but Dave went on for like a minute, and I was just looking at my BF, waiting for him to defend me. I asked Ellie, why would she alter my dish, after telling me to bring an Indian dish? She said she thought Indian food would be brown. This woman has more Indian friends than me, and she thinks Indian food is brown. She grew up in the UK, FFs, and I felt so defeated. The comments my friends and people around me telling me his friends came first to him, not me. He said he didn't think the sweet was a big deal. I told him I would never let my friend alter something he spent 3 days learning, getting people to taste it, and got his mom involved in. He saw I put a lot of effort into it, so why let her alter it? Why couldn't he ask me? Ellie started to cry and say that she wasn't being racist and she wouldn't know that I put effort into it, and now she couldn't host dinners again. I said I used fake names, so why does it matter? Unless she and Dave went around telling people. BF told me he didn't expect this from me. My best friend piped up that he expected that my BF would have a spine, so I guess they were both disappointed. My, for example, now ex-BF told me in front of Dave and Ellie that he needs some space. I told him to get lost. I don't know what my best friend said to him after that, considering I left BF's flat. I kind of tripped in the metro station, so now I'm crying on my best friend's couch with an ice pack, while his BF keeps giving me peach schnapps, and my relationship has toppled over. I wouldn't have stormed out had he looked at me once. He just looked 100% on Dave and Ellie's side, and acted like I was the one with the problem when she caused me hurt. If his friends come first when they cause me hurt, where would I have been if I decided to marry this man? My friends are good to me and are acting like I'm some fragile glass. I even heard my best friend and his brother whispering loudly from the kitchen, and his elder brother wanting to threaten him via Instagram DMs. I hate that this has come to this, considering I have always been the mom friend to my friend group. I'm drunk while writing this, so have some grace in the comments. Also, if you'll be an incel like those people in my DMs telling me I'll never keep a man if I'm this dramatic, please go away. I just thought I needed to update, that's it. Thanks, guys. Edit. Guys, this is the first time I've faced what you all have been calling racism. TBH, I didn't see Ellie putting cinnamon into my roseola as racism. I was just hurt that my days of hard work was ruined, that's it. I understand I need to work on my self-esteem and not let people walk over me. My best friend's elder brother, he's a doctor, and is super pissed at my ex because he didn't know what happened, booked an appointment with a therapist he knows, as he thinks I need mental help to not normalize aggressive behavior. I'm sorry for ranting on Reddit, but I guess that's where I am. Both my best friend and I will be going. He had been there for some time before, and the situation is tense at home because Dada, Bestie's brother, didn't know what was happening and tore my friends a new one for not protesting when Dave said to me. I still haven't told him it was over a Reddit post and that I'm writing heretic feel awful, and I don't know how to tell my mum she was right. I wish I never went out with him. One of my ex's friends, from the dinner party, asked me if I really left my ex over a dessert, so I guess that's what he told people. It hurts. I know it shouldn't, but it hurts. I think it is partially my fault. I shouldn't have let myself be treated like this. There were signs, and I ignored them. And now I think I'll never have another relationship because it feels like a horrible, anxious feeling. OP is certainly not an AH here because Ellie threw cold water on her efforts. It is not about dessert. It is about the culture. It is disregarding the culture of OP. If you don't like Bengali dessert, don't eat it. You cannot just add anything to it. It is really disrespectful. OP is justified here, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale, and Ellie gets 1.5. As for OP's husband, he is being unsupportive to his partner, so he is also an AH, and I would give him at least 2 out of 5. Let's now jump on to the next story from Called in the 90s. Revenge on a client who tried to throw me under the bus. I was pushing 40, and I'd learnt a lot of lessons in more than 10 years of legal practice. But one of the most important lessons I learnt was from an older lawyer that I worked for as a summer student after the second year of law school. A lawyer has 3 duties, he told me. First to himself, second to the court, and last, the client. Always make sure you come first, and the client comes last. The reason? Because clients will f*** you, he said. They'll throw you under the bus without thinking twice. I should have stayed with this lawyer, but being young and an idiot, I had to go work downtown, and I'm still downtown now. But fortunately for me, I remembered this lesson, and it came in handy many years later when a client really did try to throw me under the bus. My client was this mid-sized company that did this and that, and owned things here and there, not big enough to be listed, but it did have a pretty sizable real estate portfolio, and one day a building they owned burned to the ground. The company wanted to collect on the insurance, so they told Frank, a veteran salaryman, to deal with it. Frank was close to 60 and thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't need me to help him with the insurance claim, he told me. He had everything under control. Besides, lawyers are expensive. Some guys really get off on not paying legal fees, and Frank was one of those guys who gloated over every penny that he managed not to pay to the lawyers. I dealt with Frank a lot, and he was always nickel and diming me. The insurer is going to f*** you, I told Frank. It was only by luck that I even knew about the fire and the loss, because Frank had not asked for my help. He'd just let it slip one day, and since then, I'd kept on top of him, trying to get him to smarten up. I'd had to fight to get him to send me the proof of loss form to make sure he hadn't messed that up. Frank f***ed up a lot, and I wondered sometimes how he had a job. But the proof of loss was okay at least, so that was one less thing to worry about. You don't know that, he said. I could tell he just wanted to get me off the phone. I'm paid to know when insurers are trying to screw my clients, I said, and the insurer is going to screw you. They've been stringing you along for ages with requests and questions and paperwork, but they aren't going to pay you, not unless you sue them. But Frank said he knew what he was doing, that it was all under control, and besides, he got along with the adjuster so great. The limitation period expires in 2 weeks, I said, and once those 2 weeks pass, it will be too late to sue. The moment that limitation period expires, they will stop taking your calls. You'll get a final email saying, "Sorry, you're out of time," and that will be that. Don't leave this till the last minute. Let me sue right now, and you'll have the money in no time. Frank was like, "Sure, fine, whatever. Don't bother me. I got this blah blah blah." And he got off the phone as soon as he could. I sent him the usual email with clear warnings and recommendations, which he ignored. I sent the email again, and then again as the limitation period approached, and again a couple of days before the deadline. "I'm going to be at trial, and you won't be able to reach me," my final email said, "but you have to sue. You have other firms on your list, so pick one and sue." He didn't bother to reply, and I went off to do my trial. The trial lasted a couple of weeks, and there was no email from Frank. Then a month passed, and another month, still no email. I figured he must have sorted things out. Maybe Frank was right after all, I said to myself, and then my phone rang. It was Frank. "Remember that fire insurance thing we spoke about?" We'd only spoken about it like a dozen times. I figured he was calling up to gloat, so I cut to the chase. "So they paid out. That's great, Frank. You were right." He asked me what I was talking about, and could he see a copy of the claim? "What claim?" I said. "The claim against the insurer, you know, that claim." "Does that mean the insurer didn't pay?" I said. He hung up on me, and then a few minutes later, my computer dinged, and there was Frank's email, talking about how we spoke, and he told me to sue, and he was worried when I hadn't sent him a copy of the claim, so he was following up to get a copy of the claim. I emailed him back. "I take it that the insurer didn't pay you, just like I told you they wouldn't, and now that the limitation period is expired, they told you to jump in the lake, leaving you with a loss in the millions. Is that it?" I'd made a mistake by not going over Frank's head when he wouldn't listen to me, but if I'd gone over Frank's head, I never would have received another file from him, so I didn't. But that was then, and this was now. So I CC'd Frank's boss and his boss's boss, plus I CC'd Bill, the client's in-house counsel. Bill acknowledged my email right away, and called me later that day. "Frank messed up," he said. "We know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do?" "So his excuses didn't work?" "Nope." Bill explained that they'd summoned Frank to a boardroom, but his story didn't add up, given all the warnings I'd sent him. Besides, there would have been no reason for him to keep emailing the insurer if he'd told me to sue. Once the file goes to legal counsel, Frank's role is over. The company knew Frank was bullshitting them. "So that's it then?" Bill said. "We just lost a couple of $1,000,000. "It's okay," I said, explaining that when I realized that Frank was going to f*** up, I issued a claim against the insurer. Because I'd made Frank send me the proof of loss a while earlier, I had enough information that I could sue to preserve the cause of action. Not a great claim, and short on details, but good enough. "You sued without instructions?" Bill said. "Lawyers aren't supposed to sue without instructions, because if you do that, you're personally liable for whatever costs the other side incurs. It's a big deal to sue without instructions." "Yep," I said. "I sued without instructions." I pulled up a copy of the claim and emailed it to him as we spoke. "It's a little rough," I said, "but we can always amend." "Thank God," Bill said. "Can I leave it with you?" Of course he could. The insurer was a sitting duck, and I knew I'd collect from them, no problem. A few days later, I got a call from another guy who worked for the client, a guy I didn't normally deal with. They had a situation and needed my help. "I usually deal with Frank," I said. "What's up?" What was up was that Frank got called into another meeting, and they handed him a one-page letter, and then he put his little office things in a box, and security walked him past his co-workers to the elevator and escorted him downstairs to the parking lot. Bye-bye, Frank. He was too old to get another job, or at least, not a decent one. It was a life-changing event for Frank, but for me, he was just an anecdote, a cautionary tale that I tell young lawyers sometimes over beers, maybe too often, because I'm getting on in years and I have my favorite stories. I wasn't trying to get revenge on Frank, not at all, and I would have felt a bit sorry for him if he hadn't been trying to throw me under the bus, but the guy who replaced him was great and never nickeled and dimmed me, so it was all good. The revenge was really brutal and eye-opening for Frank. The lawyer's decision to claim the insurance without instructions from Frank saved millions for the client, and it also exposed Frank's incompetence, ultimately crushing his reputation and career. It was a bitter but valuable lesson for the irresponsible Frank. It was not only revenge, but also a proof of OP's professionalism. Let's now jump on to the next story from weird_stories. Here? New ownership takes over and guy goes on vacation for 2 years due to stupid new rules. A family friend was working at the same company since he was 26 up to when he was 64, when the below started. I did get his approval to retell the story, just not include anything specific, so I am keeping it anonymous and quite general on the specific details. Part of the problem was the laws in the country increasing the retirement age from 62 to 65 when he was in his early mid-50s, and then again from 65 to 67 when he was about 62 to 63. The old owners were a family and run the business with benefits to the employees. From everything I have heard, I think they were giving an extra vacation week after every 6 years at the company. So on top of the standard 4 weeks, he had an extra 6 weeks at the time of the events. Also, people had access to 2 weeks of working home office, when the job allowed them to, or an extra week off, for those that couldn't use it. So he was getting 11 weeks off each year. As a bonus, the family owners were allowing people above 55 to use their vacation time as they desired. All at once, with about a 2 weeks notice, which was just a courtesy, according to the guy, or segmented, or even not use it and pile it up for when the retirement time came. Another issue we have at our country is that when you submit retirement paperwork to the government, they take ages. So it is often the case that they may take over 2 years to calculate what to pay you and start paying you. Of course they pay back that time, but it still is an issue. For the period they delay and calculate, you are getting only the minimum amount. But the guy had already about 44 years of experience and a bit more ahead of him as an engineer and a well-paid one, which meant a great retirement amount. So the owners allowed for people to gather up their weeks of time off at the end of it and take 20 to 30 weeks off while submitting their retirement paperwork, so the money being paid would last them longer into the calculation period. Of course, some didn't use it, but many did. So the company gets sold because the owners saw some writing on the wall that their profiting wouldn't last more than 6 to 7 years more, and they wanted out. It was due to old age as well. New ownership, part of some Coca-Cola subsidiary, takes over and starts removing previous rules. At the guy's position, there were 3 of them. Him, a second colleague, and a third one. They push out the second, fire him, and the third one has a heart attack literally a week later. RIP. They also go and dock his pay by 15% because he is making too much for a simple engineer. The 3 of them hold a patent for the machinery used on something specific, a second one on how to make that machinery, and a third one on the process of the production of a small but significant part. Old owner had allowed them to put the patents on them when they invented a new, 30% cheaper and 75% faster, way of production years ago. So suddenly, he is alone on that position at 64, and the company hires 6 people for him to train, on that position. At the same time, they give up to the end of the year for all the piled up vacation time to be claimed. Notice the wording, claimed, not used. So the guy was using between 1 and 5 weeks for the past decade. So he had gathered 87 weeks of time off, including the current year. But they hadn't looked at specific cases, apparently. So they get him the 6 new people to train, and they tell him that he needs to have them trained in 6 months. He still has 2.3 to 2.5 years until retirement. So he just goes and takes 87 weeks of vacation time with a 3 hours notice on a Friday evening starting the upcoming Monday. Still no advance notifying is required. They don't pay attention on it until the next Thursday, when the CEO notices the 6 people sitting around all day and nobody training them. The phone calls start, then emails, then letters get added to the mix, then home visits by low-ranking secretaries and such to deliver the letters, then management visiting his home. By week 7, the CEO has visited 3 times, but the door hasn't been opened once. His mother-in-law lives literally across the street, old woman, and him and his wife are taking care of her, so most of the time they are over there and can see everybody visiting their house XD. The production is actually running on itself, but no upkeep is done on that critical part of it. Week 11, He says that line 1 out of the 2 breaks down. They start visiting his house 3 to 4 times a day. 2 weeks later, second line breaks down. He obviously has a lot of friends inside and is getting constant updates. At that point, they have only 4 weeks of backstock to keep the rest of production running. It is December, right before Christmas, and he goes in during week 13. He says he needs to take some things from his locker room, LOL, and the CEO starts yelling at him. "You are stopping your time off right now. You are coming back to work to fix everything up." So he offers to come back for 3 days under an agreement that the entire week will be returned to him to use for time off. The CEO reluctantly agrees and tries to push him also for the training. No budging, only fix things up and go on vacation again. By Saturday, everything is fixed up and even leaves a couple of basic instructions on what needs greasing every week. And he is off again. Few weeks pass, New Year has come around, and a line is broken again. He gets called back, and CEO pretends like the previous deal will be used again. He goes in for 2 days, fixes everything, explains couple more things to the team of 6, who by now have other duties, not to be sitting around all day, and when he is about to leave, the CEO says, "Tomorrow at 8 a.m. The guy says what? And the CEO explains, "You could claim your time off by the end of last year. You just ended your claimed time off, so you are losing the remaining 69 weeks. The guy is furious, and he just goes straight and reports the company to workers' rights. They are actually dumbfounded by the time off he has amounted, and the lady serving him calls her colleagues to listen in. They laugh their asses off by his story, and they actually issue a verdict the next day. It usually takes weeks, but apparently they had too much fun with this one. He is to get all of his time off under the previous rule, for the time accrued up before the rules changed. So he has his 69 weeks, should be 70 due to him getting the one he worked on, renewed by their deal, but he lost that one. And he also has the 6 weeks from the new year. So he goes in with the verdict and gives it personally to a fuming CEO. According to the guy, steam was coming out of his ears. The CEO accepts unwillingly the deal with the guy coming in, for 3 days every 5 weeks off. If he is needed during his time off, tough luck. They should work to produce backstock. A full year goes by that way, and the guy is 66 at this point. He has been training the 6 slowly every 5 weeks, LOL, and he is on his last visit before he takes the last 5 weeks off. The CEO goes to him and delivers personally the firing notice for the first day he will be back. He plays shocked and leaves for another 5 weeks. This one is a problem, because if you apply for retirement, even with half a year early less, you are losing significantly more than just that small period, and he has about 10 months ahead of him for retirement. His last 5 weeks expire and he goes in to gather his stuff. Only a coffee cup was remaining. He knew this was coming and he had taken everything over time. He gets an extremely big payout for the firing with no cause. Next day, he sends a cease and desist letter to the company for the use of the 3 patents. He had talked with the fired guy, who had agreed with this revenge plan. He had also talked with the widow of the now dead friend and colleague as well, and had both of them on board. He had been supporting actually the widow, but he didn't say anything to anyone. I found out very recently, formed the other guy about it. So now the company has to stop using those machines, and the method with 0 notice. All the competitors have found and built and patented their own versions of the same, and if they don't find a solution, it is going to cost 40% more, and take about double time to produce the same part of the procedure of production. So they would need to double the lines if they go and use the old method, while they look for a new one. After just 3 weeks of looking to license the method of one of the competitors, and not getting anywhere, stock being extremely low by that point, they struck a deal with the guy. He will be an external contractor, who obviously keeps the patents to his name. He will be doing the maintenance on his own, will be paid by the hour, what he was previously making on a full day, and he will be on call for maintenance while having one person there at all time for upkeep. He went and stole all 6 of the people he trained, and hired them in his new company, and put them to work back at that factory again, with almost double the pay they were receiving. He fully trained them very quickly, and he was now getting paid a ton. That CEO was fired for almost stopping production. The deal was struck mere hours before backstock ended, and he also cost the company a ton of money by firing that guy. At the funeral of the old owner, many of the old employees met up and told their different stories. And apparently, there were 3 more similar cases with patent holders, because the old owner treated his team extremely well. But he apparently was the only one to string them on for almost 2 years by being out on vacation time and getting paid. All of them had a great laugh, including the widow of the owner and his sister, who were the other 2 partners in the factory before it got sold. It was edited to fix mistakes only. Apologies for the hard reading. Update. Correction. 2 points I noticed that are not clear. The 6 people he stole from the factory to work for his new company that are then contracted back to the factory are earning what he was making when he worked at the company, and was considered too much. Their salary was extremely lower, so my comment above about them Kiang double is incorrect. Apparently, the factory was paying all 6 combined what the hero was making before he got that 15%. So for all of them, it was a huge pay raise. I would leave the factory as well if I received an offer for the same exact work, but an increase of about 550%. This I learned from the hero as an update. Apparently at the time that they stroked that last deal for him to work as a contractor, the backstock was 2 hours from finishing. But what was his last ace up his sleeve in negotiating was that, don't forget that I need at least 3 days to fix both lines, so you already need to shut the factory down for 3 days. And every minute you delay this deal, it's another minute of the entire factory being down. Apparently, a single line couldn't produce enough for production to resume. 2 lines produce about 110 to 120% of the required thing for production to continue, so he needed to get both lines up. The factory actually shut down for almost 4 days, and those idiots didn't pay the workers for those 4 days that they were not working, which ended up a class action from over 800 workers at the Workers' Rights Office, which led to a fine and forcing the factory to pay them. And that was the last drop that made the glass overflow. The news got to management from outside the country and ended up costing the CEO his job. The revenge was intense and satisfying. The new administration wanted to screw OP over, but fed up with the new rules, OP used his secret weapons, engineering patents and long privileged vacations, to cripple the company's production process, forcing them to hire him again at a higher pay and causing the CEO to resign. The revenge was truly a masterclass. 1 in 1,000. Let's now jump on to the next story from Flowing_oddity. Say goodbye to your house and your retirement. This one is not technically my revenge, but some revenge I got to see up close and take joy from and slightly participate in. The background is most of the story, so this will be a little long. Trigger warning for self-harm. I was in the Navy and stationed at the submarine base in Connecticut. I had a friend I met in boot camp, and we were in the same class for our A school, Navy job training. We'll call that friend Bill. Now, Bill wasn't the most physically fit guy. He was short, kind of chubby, and wore glasses. However, Bill was really smart, and as the sonar technician he was meant to be, he would have been amazing. He had a pragmatic way of looking at things I really valued in a friend, and I know it would have made him successful if he had made it out to the fleet. While in school, we had a couple of petty officers that were hard. They somehow convinced themselves they were super soldiers, despite the fact that our jobs in that field are really nerd-centric. You get picked for that job because of your math and computer skills, not your deadlift number. Still, they were both all about being fit and working out all the time. We would do physical training 3 times a week, and while most of us could keep up, Bill often fell behind on runs or didn't quite meet what these 2 idiots believed to be the standard. To be clear, Bill did pass the minimum requirements for fitness, he just didn't go as extreme as these guys. Side note for other Navy vets, he got the MC pawn coin for how hard he pushed himself at PT the day he visited. The end result was that they would constantly berate and belittle Bill. They'd call him fat, lazy, and everything else. They'd tell him he should kill himself, you name it. They were always on his despite him passing his assessments. At some point, Bill pushed himself too hard and injured his knee. He told these petty officers he was injured and had been seen by the doctor on base. The doctor had put him on light duty so the knee could recover. He had the paperwork to back it up. They elected to ignore that and threaten him with kicking him out if he didn't do the workouts. So Bill kept pushing himself, injuring himself more, and his mental health degraded the whole time. In my time in the Navy, you didn't really get mental health services. The only person to talk to like that was the chaplain. For those who don't know, the chaplain is the religious leader, usually a pastor/priest/rabbi, that has signed up as a commissioned officer. Our chaplain was the sweetest little woman you ever met, but as a chaplain, she held the rank of captain, high-ranking officer. So Bill set up a meeting with the chaplain to talk about things. When Bill informed the petty officers he would be missing class the next day for his chaplain meeting, they yelled at and berated him more. They called him a cat, useless, not fit for the Navy, and everything else you can imagine. They convinced Bill he was being weak and the chaplain wouldn't care about his issues, that nobody would care. They promised to make life even harder if he didn't show the next day. So he cancelled his meeting. Evidently, bad luck hit, and that night his girlfriend was also breaking it off with him. She wasn't worth his time or money, but he couldn't see that. That night, I awoke to a 3 a.m. call from Bill. I couldn't hear anything, and I asked several times, "Bill, you there? Are you okay?" It wouldn't have been the first time that I got a drunk dial from one of my friends after a hard day like Bill had. Sailors have been known to drown their sorrows a bit. Eventually, I figured it was a butt dial drunk dial and hung up and went back to bed. I still regret that decision. The next day, all hell broke loose. Me and a couple other friends got calls from Bill's now ex-girlfriend, informing us he was in the hospital because he slit his own throat. It turned out a few of us got that 3 a.m. call, but Bill couldn't speak at the time and was kind of out of it due to blood loss. We finished what we had to do on base and rushed over to the hospital. As we got there, the chaplain was on her way out, and we passed her in the hallway. She spoke to us briefly to say that Bill would be okay, and she wouldn't forget this. I have never seen a look on someone's face that so accurately depicted raw, unfiltered rage. It took us all by surprise because she was such a small, sweet, and personable lady. But from the look in her eyes, you could just tell she wanted someone to pay for this. She wanted revenge, and we all knew she wore the kind of rank that could get it done. We visited Bill, who could barely talk, but he told us the story of what had happened, what he was thinking at the time, and how glad he was it didn't work. Apparently it was cold enough that the blood clotted on the outside of his neck, and made a kind of patch that kept him alive long enough for the EMS to find him and get him to a hospital. The doctor said he missed his carotid by about 1 millimeter. A week went by, and we hadn't heard anything until we got called in by the chief of the training command, the boss to these petty officers. He said he wanted to check on the rest of us and make sure there weren't any other issues with these guys he wasn't aware of, and that we were all okay. I let him know about an ass chewing he gave me a few months back, that I was really set up by these guys, and they had lied to him. My friends cited a couple other examples of their own, with these guys being generally dishonest people. I don't think it mattered. I think their fates were already sealed, and we were being asked for more ammo to bury them with. The next day, they were nowhere to be found, and we were introduced to new instructors who would be taking over our training permanently. After class, I decided to stop by and ask the chaplain what happened. She told me she had never been more disgusted by the actions of a sailor than these two guys who convinced someone not to come see her. She teared up a bit, regretting that she didn't get the chance to help Bill before he made his attempt. In her mind, it was these two that precipitated and enabled Bill's attempt. So on to the revenge. The chaplain told me she went to the admiral in charge of the entire base and demanded their immediate discharge. He granted it. Both petty officers were immediately processed out with dishonorable discharges. I can't remember the exact charge I heard they cited for it, but I know the Navy has a way of selling BS on paper when they want a certain outcome, especially officers at that high level. So basically, they get no VA benefits of any kind, got kicked out of the base housing they lived in, and could probably only find work at a gas station or under-the-table stuff somewhere. Also, I know from someone else who got the boot that the Navy only pays for a single bus ticket to get you back home, not your family or any of your belongings. When you have a discharge like that, no company with DoD contracts is allowed to hire you. That includes McDonald's because they have stores on bases throughout the country, Taco Bell, Subway, etc. None of them will give you a job. They can't, and they don't want to anyway. So, I don't know where these guys went or what became of them, but I know their lives were irrevocably ruined, One of them had about 18 years in, so he was 2 years from retirement and lost it all. The other was at about 12 years, so he also lost a lot. Wherever they are now, I'd be very surprised to hear they're making more than minimum wage. As for Bill, well, he made a full recovery. He got a full medical discharge, which is an honorable discharge that meant E5 pay for the rest of his life, full benefits, and a referral to a counselor in his home state once he got back there. All paid for by the Navy. We lost touch over the years, but I did see on Facebook he got himself together, became a police officer, and got married. Edit to add, for those who have pointed it out, their discharges were actually OTH, but I didn't want to have to explain the difference or have people Google it. We always used dishonorable colloquially for OTH BCD because they all mean you got the boot and your life is going to stink. But no, they didn't do full CM or any break time. But I did hear they pushed it to ASB and lost. Also saw someone pointed out Bill wouldn't get the medical at 100% for his neck. That's also true, he wouldn't have, but they wrote it up for his knee because it was basically bone on bone inside. I think they decided to do him a favor and not put him down as a mental health discharge. Really gratifying revenge. The revenge was really satisfying and perfectly executed. The petty officers received the punishment they deserved. The chaplain made sure that the abusive officers faced life and career-destroying consequences by stripping them of their retirement benefits and future opportunities. The revenge was swift, complete, and aligned with the harm they caused to Bill. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries!